Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this techUK industry briefing on Silicon Stoke. My name is Sophie James, and I am Head of Telecoms and Spectrum Policy. And I'm joined by my co-host colleague, Georgina Maratheftis, who is Associate Director of Local Public Services. I'll do some housekeeping, then a brief intro to techUK before looking ahead to today's event. So for this session, please note we are recording and we will share the recording on the techUK website in the coming week. Please remain on mute throughout with your cameras turned off. And as Georgina has said, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat function, and any questions for our speakers can be posted there in the chat. And then we'll come to the Q&A. Please feel free to, raise your hand using Teams, and Georgina and I will field questions. So for our guests and new members, a very brief introduction to techUK. techUK is the trade association which brings together people, companies and organisations to realise the positive outcomes of what digital technology can achieve. Got over 850 members, the majority of which are SMEs from across the UK. And techUK creates a network for innovation and collaboration across business, government and stakeholders to provide a better future for people, society, the economy and the planet. By providing expertise and insight, we support our members, partners and stakeholders as they prepare the UK for what comes next in a constantly changing world. And to what comes next for Stoke-on-Trent. We are delighted to be hosting this event for members with presentations from representatives of the Silicon Stoke board, who are integral to the development and delivery of the Silicon Stoke prospectus. Stoke-on-Trent is an ambitious smart city in the making. The recent prospectus has set out the city's ambitions for its digital transformation to help secure partnerships and investment into the city. I will leave it to the wonderful Silicon Stoke team to introduce themselves, but first, please allow me to introduce, great pleasure, Councillor Abby Brown, leader of Stoke-on-Trent City Council, and John Rouse, who is City Director at the Council as well. So over to Councillor Brown and John. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and thank you everybody for taking time out of your busy days to listen to what we are doing in the small but mighty city of Stoke-on-Trent. For those of you who are not familiar with Stoke-on-Trent, we're a North Midlands city, famous for sending our fantastic ceramic wares around the world. And the one thing that you'll know somebody from Stoke-on-Trent always does is lifts up a plate in a restaurant and checks what the back stamp is. We're on a journey as a city to move forward. Our industry, our ceramics industry, went through industrial decline, but is very much resurgent at the moment, and we are moving forward and advancing, but really trying to bring together also that strong heritage that you can see there on the screen through what champions our ceramics industry, but also looking at the opportunities in front of us. We're really well located geographically, and we have a real loyal and hardworking population. We're renowned as being one of the kindest cities in the UK. So we're very much about forging a new reputation for ourselves, taking the best of what's made us a world-beating city in the past, but very much championing moving forward. Before I hand over to John to talk a little bit about what the Silicon Stoke prospectus means, part of our transformational journey as a city has been about being very clear around what our priorities are and where we want to go. And hopefully over the last few weeks, you will have heard increasing mention of Stoke-on-Trent, because we appear to be one of the places that the government is very much focused on in terms of their levelling up agenda. We were mentioned no less than 33 times in the white paper that was published last week. And building on the back of receiving £56 million from the Levelling Up Fund at the end of last year, which was the biggest single allocation for any place in the country. Last week, we were also highlighted as a place that will be receiving support in terms of buses, but also becoming one of 55 education improvement areas, and also a mysterious line around supporting us in terms of culture and heritage. So we continue to have conversations with government around there, but I think I would say that a lot of that builds on the fact that about 12 months ago we published our own vision for where we thought the city was going and the things that we needed help with, and coincidentally they tied into all of those individual things: regeneration, transport, education skills, and health and productivity. And shortly after that, one of the things that we then produced was the Silicon Stoke prospectus, which John's going to talk through a little more in a second. But in effect, how we draw a parallel between those 4 key pillars that we believe are the areas that really will propel our city forward at a huge pace, and actually how that ties in to the ambitious Silicon Stoke agenda. We're going to hand over to John to talk a little bit through that. John.
Thank you. So connectivity for a city like our own is incredibly important. We're a dense, compact, polycentric settlement of around 250,000 people, but with a significant hinterland in terms of North Staffordshire as well. And we realised several years ago that if we could get ahead of the game and actually really put in place the essentials of digital connectivity, it would give us a significant economic advantage over the next 20 or 25 years. So that's what we did. And the starting point for that was to ensure that we had gigabit enabled fibre capacity across the entire city, that every property, residential and business, should have that access in terms of gigabit speeds, low latency, so that when we can then do all sorts of extraordinary things with that infrastructure. And as you'll hear in a few minutes, that is what we have done. We are, I think, the first city and still the only city in the country to have that full network already in place, all the cable laid over 110 kilometres, and by the end of the year, as you'll hear from Michael Sandberg, all of our properties will be passed in terms of their potential to join that network. But it's all very well having such a network, is what you do with it. And so we scanned the world and we looked at those places that we admired, places like Aalborg in Denmark and Hobart in Australia. And what made them stand out was that they were smart cities. In other words, it wasn't just about digital, it was about what you did with it. How did it actually drive your educational offer? How did you enable you to do something different around health and care? What did it do for your small and medium enterprises in terms of unlocking their potential, and so on? It's also about infrastructure as well. It's about how the network could link to our growing district energy network. It was about the relationship potentially to intelligent traffic signalling and our bus network. It's about sustainable urban drainage. Our ultimate vision, ambition is that we will be a truly smart city and renowned as much for that as we have been historically in terms of our ceramics. So the economic dividend we've calculated, if we can pull this off over just the next 15 years, is something like £625 million, utilising our municipal network because we own the network, to drive innovation across a whole number of areas that we're going to talk about some parts of today. But the reason why we really wanted this briefing is because, well, one thing we absolutely know is that we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the capacity, we don't have all the capability that we require if we're going to make the impact that we could make in terms of the infrastructure we have in place. We need the support of industry. We need innovation, we need know-how, and we need help in terms of investment capacity to unlock the full potential of the network. So I hope you find this morning interesting as we go through some of these areas, and we look forward to hearing your questions and answers. Your questions, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. And we'd love to do some follow-up for those of you who are interested in doing some bilateral follow-up after this event. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to our strategic partner, Michael Sandberg, Chairman of VX Fibre.
Thank you very much, John. Really appreciate that. Good morning, all. I'm Michael Sandberg. I'm the Chairman and co-founder of VX Fibre. And just like John said, when the city recognises it can't do all these things alone, so do we. We cannot do digital transformation of a city by ourselves, but we do that in cooperation. We also recognise that we are only one component in a digital infrastructure or ecosystem that comprises connectivity, like John said, but also big data, AI, and cybersecurity. And within connectivity, you have the fibre component and you have the wireless component, the 5G. And those two act in synergy. We can have questions on that later. And that in turn sits in an ecosystem of transport, energy, jobs, education, etc., that makes up the smart city, making our lives a better place, basically. Now, so who are we in this ecosystem? We are a fiber operator. We operate fiber networks in many markets, in many countries around the world. And on this page, you will see some of the places that we are operating today. We have a long history, mainly out of Sweden. So this is our 21st year of fiber operations. And as a fiber builder, we work together with other fiber owners, meaning that we do not seek to dominate an area, but we seek to join forces with other investors, other infrastructure owners, and to put that together into an open access model, which you see on this page. Now, this is the active open access model that you see in front of you. Other operators will talk about open access, but what they mean is often they allow other service providers to use one of their fibers. Now, this may sound as a subtlety to you, but it has major consequences. If that is your approach, that means that large service providers are your partners who can afford to put in their own equipment and try to dominate in their own traditional way. What we do is we allow, through the system, which is a network based on software and active equipment, allow very small service providers to get access to this network on very limited capex. In fact, all you need to do is to cross-connect and then define your service within the wholesale range, and you are selling. You do not need to invest in any active equipment or manage those active network equipments. So that opens up the market for small service providers and small services such as IoT and other. We'll come to the municipality type of services that we promote, and these are very cheap and easy to add on top as a marginal service once the infrastructure is in the ground. And speaking of infrastructure in the ground, in Stoke we're passing roughly half the premises today, and by the end of this year we'll be passing most of the premises in Stoke and in fact several of the surrounding neighbourhoods as well. But together with Stoke City, who owns the city network, we're operating all of that as an open access network. And looking at VX Fiber, our unique collaborative approach is one around how do we together identify the objectives, the specific outcomes and benefits, and we really take care of delivering those. Many others will talk about them, but very few have the ability to actually deliver these outcomes. And this is not unique to the UK. We are doing this. We have done this for over 20 years in Sweden. We worked with 105 out of 290 city councils in Sweden to deliver these outcomes and benefits. Today, that can be measured in many different qualitative and quantitative terms. But a structured partnership with the cities where we work based on their vision and objectives, where we leverage existing infrastructure, existing assets, and delivering these specific outcomes. And you will have heard about for example, the gaming hub that is now coming into place in Stoke. That's a specific outcome that we set out to do from the start. And really looking at the ecosystem to make sure that everyone benefits from what is essentially a public good, which is the fiber network. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Bowler. I'm the Strategic Manager for ICT at the City Council. So I'll spend a few minutes this morning talking about the municipal marketplace and what that is. So before I do that, I just want to highlight the Stoke-on-Trent full fibre network. I think as has already been said, it's around 113 kilometres full fibre gigabit symmetric network, and we're aiming for 100% saturation, so citywide full fibre access. Next slide, please, Steve. So onto the municipal marketplace. So powered by the internet, the marketplace model has shifted. Customers no longer need to travel to a physical market to buy goods. They can order them from home, and digital connectivity for that, of course, is vital. The marketplace is a diverse market of buyers and sellers, both of whom require reliable data infrastructure to deliver the digital services and products they intend to sell or buy. So as smarter services become digitally available, digital infrastructure needs to be flexible and scalable enough to handle large-scale information flow. So if we look at our city in the little info diagram there, you can see our city in the middle, and you can see the VX infrastructure running around the city of which our marketplace is built on, and you can see the services and consumers coming into that marketplace. If we think about some practical examples of what that looks like, we could take, for example, municipal services or council services such as adult social care and bring those together with digital solutions providers such as remote health care monitoring and offer that as a service across our city. And of course, we can do more than that as well. We can bring in other services that reside on the network, such as the acute care or hospitals and care homes. We can bring all that together to offer a really sort of rounded service to the residents of the city. But it's more than just healthcare and adult social care. And you can see in the diagram here, we've got a power station, we've got some schools, and we've got some schools, so we'll pick up on that later, but offices. And of course, being a city, we also have traffic lights and cityscape. So we have bins and gullies that need clearing. And with the sort of the dense saturation of the infrastructure, we can start to connect those up as well and deliver far more efficient council services. The next slide, please, Steve. Thank you. So what does that architecturally look like in a little bit more detail? So on this slide shows towards the bottom of the slide, you can see the passive infrastructure, which again has already been explained. Some of that is owned by the city and some of it by VX. Layered on top of that is the active infrastructure, which is managed by VX as the wholesale neutral fibre operator. And above that, you have the municipal marketplace operator, which is the city council. Now, with many traditional models, you have retail subscription services, which are over here on the right. So telecom, broadband, and TV, which you all have at home. We wanted to do a bit more, and what we can do with the municipal marketplace is bring those solutions providers, the municipal services and sector services together. And across the top here, you can start to see some of those. Now, some of those we mentioned in the earlier slides, such as health and education, but there's also industry, tourism, smart energy, and the flow which we travel around the city. Bringing all that together produces some real end benefits to our residents and people, of course, who work and visit the city. So efficiency in local government, obviously something really important to us, but also sustainability in terms of the ecological footprint, health and wellness, mobility, economic growth, and public safety, but perhaps most important of all, quality of life. So in conclusion, the municipal marketplace gives us the ability to provide integrated services citywide. It becomes the go-to place for smart city services. Using the analogy, the council is the anchor tenant, and we've already added all our public buildings onto the infrastructure. It's around 60 in total so far. We're currently connecting up our CCTV, and we're providing other network services. It's a bit wider than that, though. We can also connect other public services should they wish to. And of course, all of that enables us to deliver the Silicon Stoke vision. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Just like to talk about our current approach to 5G and IoT. We're in a very unique position as a local authority with the network that we have, in that not only do we have what most local authorities have, which is vertical asset, but we have a high quality underpinning network. And that network, in essence, is connected on the whole to the majority of that vertical asset. So we have an operational model at the moment for 5G, and in principle, the same thing applies to IoT. Because that vertical asset's connected, we can roll out small cells, or we can roll out sensor technology, and we have the fibre network capability to sit that on. We can deliver a 20 gig
We can provide a dedicated network to do that on. It's part of the conversations that we're starting to have at the moment with, where possible, mobile network operators. Even though 5G has been talked about a lot, I think it's still early doors in terms of densification. But we're certainly interested in looking at a different, more innovative approach where possible in terms of asset sharing. I know this is all sort of things that have been talked about, and in particular around Open RAN and things like that. But in particular, our strength is the fibre infrastructure. An MNO could come in and drop straight onto our network and drop straight onto our asset. It doesn't always fit the current model, but that's where we say we're looking to be more innovative and take this sort of more neutral host approach if we can. So we're engaged in a number of discussions around that. It's early doors, but something we'd really like to do. IoT is extremely broad. We can do quite a lot with IoT. Once we understand what those IoT requirements are and how they develop and who we can work with on that, again, the infrastructure is in place to deploy. Crucially, they're our assets. It's our network that we're deploying on. We can move very quickly on large-scale city projects or small-scale pilots, for that matter. And crucially within that, we want to undertake a systematic review of what the main opportunities are in the application of technological innovation. And obviously that's something that you, as members of techUK, would very much be able to possibly assist with us with. Thank you. Okay, the other area now that we spoke about earlier is our approach to education in the city. Do you want to pick up on the schools model, John?
Yeah, of course, Steve. So we're looking at an operational model which has been developed for all schools in partnership with JISC as an educational ISP. And we're intending to roll that out to all schools in around April 2022. And what that will offer the schools in the city is high-speed broadband, but also the services that JISC can provide, such as cyber security and of course the resources that they're able to offer via the Janet infrastructure.
I think one of the interesting areas for future development on that is that beyond our capability just to connect schools is the area we can explore in terms of setting up an individual schools network even, and where they can connect to pupils in the home. And it's certainly something that we're interested in and JISC are interested in terms of moving forward. It's some way off yet, but it really does open up what we can do in terms of educational support for schools within the city.
We expect your call to be answered shortly.
Sorry, it's not me. Someone not on mute. The full-fibre academy is something else that's already launched. It's with Stoke-on-Trent College, and that's about physical infrastructure. There's been a high demand regarding all the rollout of fibre and fibre networks, ducting, and all the civils work involved. So the college has set up an actual full-fibre academy to deliver a range of short courses, training, retraining, and also apprenticeships to provide the skills and the staff to actually support that on a local and national basis. And they're working closely with our partners VX Fibre in terms of apprenticeships and the skill set required there. The sixth form college have recently been designated as a digital schoolhouse, which is another quite strong programme that we're looking at rolling out, and that is already in progress. And on top of that, as has been mentioned earlier, we're certainly looking around the concept of a gaming hub, and more than anything, how we maximise on the gaming sector within the city. We have a university with an extremely strong gaming faculty, and you know we can really build on that strength in terms of the city itself becoming a gaming hub and maximising that sector for what it is. I'd like to hand over to Peter Tomlin, who's
Morning, everybody.
Social care, who's going to cover the health and social aspects.
Morning, everybody. Echoing all over the place. Okay, so in terms of go from one end of the spectrum with children and young people and colleges to the other end in terms of we have a growth in the number of older people and people with complex needs, as it's been in many areas around the country. And you'll be aware, coming out of COVID, with the issues you've seen on the news around the workforce issues around this. So we're moving away from buildings, as John mentioned there, and moving away from people-based services to enabling people to have more control over their lives and more support towards independence through the use of technology and the way that people consume and manage their health and social care. So clearly this is a big area for us. In terms of three areas I just want to focus in on. One is the sort of remote monitoring, which is a project we're doing around care homes, but more broadly around remote monitoring and support for people wherever they are. And in terms of that, that's things like building off the back of the full-fibre network that we talked about earlier. How can we get things like oximeters, blood pressure machines, glucose monitors, the digital medical offer into places like care homes, so people can actually be supported. They don't need to come forward to hospitals in order to meet their needs. So we can reduce down hospital admissions from care homes, and we can reduce clinical workloads as well, where GPs can support people within care homes without the need for them to come out of that care home to be seen. Secondly, and we're doing that with 12 care homes initially. We've got just under 79 care homes that we commission and work with across Stoke-on-Trent, and we look to roll that out, again, piggybacking on the full-fibre network that we talked about earlier. The second area really is around the enhanced digital skills that's required across both our residents but also our staff as well. The biggest issue is when people are supported and work with is our own staff understanding what's available and the need to have an educated both population and workforce for everything from AI through to telecare and telehealth options and smart aids in the home. So we've got a rollout of a number of workshops. This is off the back of a successful bid for Community Renewal Fund bid for a large amount of investment to use things like the Alexas, so people can actually manage and support themselves at home. We've got workshops across the city. We've got workshops across our workforce as well to start to develop that. And then thirdly, one of the biggest areas that we have is we've already got an integrated care record that's in place across health and social care. But our question then is, how do we make it work and make it really live for people? I mean, my dream is that the moment you get into hopefully before you even call 999, but if you did and if you ever end up in an ambulance, that you could actually they could see, they know what is the input from both social care and health, but making those things live and working across the system. Agile working, how do we enable people to work more agilely across the system, and then again those enhanced digital skills across our workforce so that we can actually support those integrated models which the government are bringing forward to make sure that health and social care work together. Clearly we need to work together in a more smart way if we're going to be moving forward. So I think that's that from me, from Steve.
So if I just draw the threads together as we come towards a close, and then we will open up via our hosts for questions. Obviously, we have not been, if we could just switch the slide, please, forward one, Steve. Yeah. As we come towards the end of this, I just wanted to say, first of all, that we haven't been able to cover everything that is contained within the Silicon Stoke prospectus. So I'd really encourage you to read that. There are other projects and programmes we haven't been able to do justice to this morning. But I also want to make clear that we don't intend Silicon Stoke prospectus to be exhaustive. If there are other great ideas out there, including from techUK members, as to how we could exploit the network for the benefit of the city and its residents, we would be really open to that and exploring those ideas directly with you. The final thing I want to say is that there is a board that oversees all this work, and the board, I think, is quite unique because not only does it cover all sectors, so our public sector partners, but also industry, education institutions, health, etc. It also has national expertise on there as well, including through government in terms of DCMS representatives. And that's a reflection of the fact that government itself recognises that Stoke-on-Trent is an incredibly important barometer in terms of the rollout of the benefits of full fibre capability and the evolution of smart cities in the UK. Why? Because we're one of the furthest advanced in terms of the infrastructure and therefore a test bed for innovation. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it interesting, and we look forward both to the questions and also the follow-up.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. Thank you, Councillor Brown, John, Steve, Michael, Paul, Peter and John. I think you've done a fantastic job within, half an hour talking us through the prospectus, and already seeing comments and offers of support and collaboration within the chat function. And we've got plenty of time now for Q&A, but my first question to you is, what are the next steps for our members getting in touch and enabling some of those collaborations to happen, given that the chat function has been flooded with offers and suggestions? What would be the next steps there? John, if you want to come in, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So just to answer your question directly, so we have an inward investment team called Make It Stoke-on-Trent and Staffs, and they are already primed to collect the advances we get today in terms of people who would like follow-up bilateral conversations with us. Depending on the subject matter, we will then pass that out to different members of the Silicon Stoke board and their teams to arrange those follow-up meetings as quickly as possible.
Oh, excellent. That's great to hear. And if, John, I can also ask you, what would success look like for the programme in terms of those partnerships? Is there a specific benchmark at all?
Yeah, so I think there are two main things we're really hoping for. So the first is to unlock and advance some of the areas of the prospectus where we still have got a lot of progress to make. So we've already mentioned IoT as an example. We'd also like to unlock the next stages of 5G, particularly in terms of the potential of getting an M&O on board. We think there is more innovation in both the education and healthcare spaces, which we don't necessarily have the capacity and capability to deliver right now, but we think others probably do in terms of getting involved. So that's the first part. The second then is the sort of Rumsfeld, the unknown unknowns. So we think there are probably ideas out there from industry that we haven't thought of that would build on the potential of the network and take us in additional directions, and we'd love to hear about those, and we are, as I say, open to taking those ideas and potentially running with them.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So lots then. I think someone asked in the chat about sharing details, which I'm sure, if you're happy, John, techUK can share the next steps in the follow-up email. Miles, I'm not sure if you wanted to ask a question. You're on camera. You're welcome to unmute.
I've just joined. My apologies. I'll kill my camera. Thank you.
Oh, no.
It was a late joiner.
No problem at all. If I can go to Jim Burt, please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Fantastic. You see my note in the chat, but you've solved the hardest part, which is digging the holes in the ground and getting the infrastructure in place. So congratulations and go Stoke, as I put, because I think that's a brilliant milestone. My part, although I've got a lot of things I'd love to talk about in terms of sitting on top of that infrastructure platform as a service. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that one can do in parts, but we've got a capability that basically has all the parts and of course can be consumed via any infrastructure or an internet network. But my question for this audience is, have you done any work around cyclic economies? So we've done quite a bit of work up in Northumbrian Water, we attended Nigel Watson's innovation event, and we did a lot of work around SUDS, and I think it was John might have mentioned sustainable drainage as one of the conversation points. And through the course of that, we found all sorts of sustainability-based companies and ended up talking about ESG and risk. We kept going back into the community. So yeah, we can do lots of superficial things that are technically a good idea. But so our big interest was focused on the local community. So if we use sustainable drainage as a subject, how do we apply that? If we apply it in a manner that the community support it, so we get their sentiment through the course of your planning and budgeting, etc., and make sure that we're doing the right things for the community. Because during those, especially big civil projects, there's lots of things you can do around them that the community can benefit from, in terms of access to property, in terms of education, where we've got sort of more deprived areas or areas where there's an education dip in terms of national scores. So it's that. So have you guys been doing anything with the community underneath the civil type projects that you're discussing, where we can create more jobs, we can create more, what would I call it, that people can sustain their own well-being, that it benefits the community in general, rather than it's just a point solution or investment to solve a flooding problem?
Yeah, great question. Bring about the citizen and the community. Just to say, the Stoke team and speakers are welcome to put themselves on camera as well for the discussion. So yeah, who from the team would like to take that, Steve? Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Steve.
No, it's all right. I'll let John pick that one up, I think. I just came back on camera as requested.
Yeah, it's quite a broad question, isn't it? So I'm probably best placed to give an overview. I think there are probably three different types of opportunity that are relevant to your question, and I'll try and deal with them briefly, but in order. So the first is where you've got a dense existing community where you're not expecting to make any really substantial physical changes. In other words, your physical infrastructure is going to be largely what it is today for the foreseeable future. I think the key there is to make sure that there is social gain and benefit, and potentially individual economic benefit in terms of training and jobs. That's why we've introduced the full-fibre academy. That's why we're putting such a focus on joining up the schools and making them very sort of highly digitally enabled. And we're very open to other ways of bringing benefit into those communities. So I think they're the first group. The second is where you've got an existing community, but you are contemplating making quite major change physically to that community. So a good example of that would be estate renewal. So when we contemplate or do estate renewal, how do we ensure that we maximise the benefit that the digital network can bring in the way that we design infrastructure, that we design benefits into those properties? And then the third is brand new development. So we've got an amazing track record as a city in terms of brownfield development. We develop something like 1,000 units every year, 99% of which is on brownfield sites. We're really good at it. And we have a really great relationship with Homes England to help us with that. So clearly we're having discussions right from the start now with the developers with respect to how we build in the benefits of connection to the full-fibre network, working with VX Fibre, and to ensure that those benefits are on tap as soon as the properties are built.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, John. So I'd love to have a follow-up on that. The couple of bits that I would add to that is we've actually got an academy capability. So we are deliberately investing in the deprived areas, or even obviously we've got quite a few based on some world challenges in inbound refugee communities and the disenfranchised, really. So the quid pro quo for me is I need more ServiceNow educated administrators and developers out in the UK and Irish market. So there's a benefit to us both. So that's an underpinning capability that we have operating in the UK and Ireland. I'd love to see if we can help you exploit it. Yeah. The second part is around those, yes, so we've got a load of insight from different conversations we've had around cyclic economy and ESG. Not to kill the agenda, because there'll be other questions, I'm sure, but I'd love to follow up on how you're approaching ESG and risk. And I suppose the question around unintended consequences, as I call them. So as we do lots of different things and we've got lots of moving parts, then how do you track the consequences and dependencies at the same time? And the last part is sentiment. So one of the things we discovered was that if we try to communicate with the local community using the standard ways, we could send out 1,000 letters and we'll get 10 back, 5 of which will be filled in properly. Yeah, so that's not giving you and me a good or a proper feel for the community's view of what we're doing or what we intend to invest in. So, and you mentioned the gaming hub. So we've got a gamification methodology where we can actually touch. The demographic who use games was a surprise to me, given my grey beard. But we can touch from sort of 10 years to 70 years old and ask them a set of questions inside an environment where they're completely focused. And one of the big outcomes from the Sprint and Innovation Festival we uncovered was bringing that audience along with you, using a methodology that gets as much, we get as the biggest view possible that we can from the community audience before we make, it informs your decision-making process.
Sorry, Jim, if we're just conscious of time, if we can...
Yeah, that's me finished, but thank you. I'd love to have a follow-up on that, John, because I think we can help you. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I know there's quite a lot there. John, I was just going to say as well, for any other questions, if you do have, if you could let us know, who you're addressing that question to as well, because we had a number of presenters. If not, the team can chip in, but just conscious of time. But the good thing is the team were very efficient, so we've got lots of time for discussion, but want to make sure everyone has a chance. So before I go back to the chat, if I can ask Andrew to unmute.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for the presentation. Really, really useful. So my name is Andrew Houston. I'm a construction project manager and I lead up our regeneration plans at Rugby Borough Council. So really interesting to hear your everything you've done on digitalisation. You are a million miles further forward than we are and probably most of the country. My question really relates to regeneration and the benefits that you've discussed today, especially around the digital marketplace. Most of our high streets in the UK are suffering from degradation. Ours is probably no different to any other high street. And wondered how you have balanced the good things that come from digitalization, such as the marketplace, with the needs on the ground. And I'm talking here about footfall. So what has been the balance between digital marketplace and footfall and still drawing in people to your town centre?
That's a really great question, Andrew, and I think we would be the first to say that is a work in progress. You know as well as I do that our high streets are making a very rapid evolution, and what people are looking for now is experience. It's an experiential offer that you have to put into your high streets, and how do you then blend digital with physical in terms of people still wanting to meet and to collaborate. That's the concept really behind the gaming hub, somewhere where people can come, learn, play, collaborate, network. So that's very important. But I think I'm also right in saying that part of the Silicon Stoke team, Dan Waterman, who's one of our main enterprises, digital enterprise in the city, is on the call. And I wondered if Dan, putting you on the spot, Dan, whether you'd be prepared to just come in and talk about what you're doing in Stoke. Taking a bit of a risk here. I know he's on the call because I saw him earlier, but if he's not able to come in, if not, then we'll organise for that to be circulated as a bit of a case study, because what Dan's done is really interesting. He's taking a building in one of our town centres and he's using it partly in terms of his own business needs, but he's also using it as a community space as well, so that it's animating the high street, is creating a meeting space, and it's adding value while also providing a really high quality digital enterprise offer. I think we need to do more of that in our town centres.
Especially when, you know, the levelling up funds that you mentioned earlier, if you look, I think the new head was I can't remember his name, but he was the chief economist at the Bank of England, has taken over, and everything he has said has been about physical infrastructure, but more so it's been about social infrastructure. So again, around that balance there. But thank you for your answer, and thank you for today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. Building on that, John, there's a question in the chat from Alan Lewis asking about what the SME opportunity is, and that was something that was referenced in the prospectus. So if you can touch on that in a bit more detail, that would be great.
Yeah, and just prime other members of the team if you want to come in behind me on this. So we haven't talked a huge amount about this morning, but I think there are two main opportunities. The first is we are doing a lot of work at the present time to create some fantastic new enterprise spaces for SMEs, and that is very deliberate to allow them to cluster in a number of our town centres in environments which I think are going to be very high quality digitally. So we've used the government's Get Building Fund money for this. We've got 4 new centres coming on stream over the next few months. And there will be, you know, sort of a business support offer as part of that with a digital specialism attached to it. So it's particularly aimed at businesses who don't necessarily have to be digital businesses, but need digital enablement to make the most of their business opportunity. So that's very exciting, I think. Second, through the Community Renewal Fund money, we are developing a virtual innovation hub as a support network for all SMEs within the city, and we're working very closely with the University and the Chamber on the development of that innovation hub. And to be honest, we would ultimately like that to have a physical home as well. So I think a lot of that work will always be virtual, but it'd be great if there was a physical component to it. So that's the second part. But then the third is around the opportunities of the supply chain. So we want to drive social value through our work. We will be responsible for stewarding the Shared Prosperity Fund in due course, which is the successor to the European funds, in the way we deploy those funds to support skills development, employment, and business development. We will want to ensure that SMEs have a fantastic opportunity to be nurtured and to grow and develop within the city. So one of the things I would say today is I can't think of a better place right now than Stoke-on-Trent if you are a digital business and you want a supportive environment to develop and grow. So if there are any SMEs who would be interested in moving into the city, we would handhold them through that process.
Excellent, thank you, John. If I can ask Chris Holmes to unmute, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Chris Holmes, member of the House of Lords, Vice Chair of the All-Party AI and FinTech groups, amongst other things. Thank you for quite simply a sensational presentation. Yes, because of the vision, but absolutely because of the energy that you've all conveyed this morning. And it's all rooted in, yes, we can. I love it. So 3 quick questions, if I may, but a quick shout out also. One has to mention, big shout out for Titanic Brewery and High Lane Oatcakes. I try my best to keep both of those businesses more than just afloat. 3 questions. Firstly, what do you see as some of the big barriers you're going to come up against in the next 12 months? Secondly, what would be your one big ask to government? And thirdly, have you considered, without adding to a sensational piece of work, have you considered, and apologies if this is in this prospectus, I haven't read it cover to cover, have you considered the potential for what digital finance could bring to this in terms of the potential development of a Stoke coin, perhaps? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, the first thing I think I've got to say is we very much welcome your recognition of our fantastic food and beverage offer. And I will be contributing to Titanic's business strength this evening. And I would recommend their fantastic beers to everybody else as well. Starting at the top in terms of the challenges, I think there are a couple of main ones. And I'm going to just be very open about this. First of all, there are real limits to the extent to which a local authority alone can invest further capital. It's fantastic because of our relation with VX that we've been, and through government funding via DCMS, that we've got the full fibre network built, fantastic. But in terms of further investment, we do need to work in partnership, particularly with the private sector, and we have to unlock other sources of capital in terms of making the most of the network where that is a requirement. So I think that is a significant and recognised challenge. And then I think the second is the limits to our own know-how. And that's why we're doing this event, and we'll do other events like it, is because we know we need help, and we're quite humble about that. And we are really open to other players coming in. We don't care if the landscape actually ends up quite messy. We think that's a positive. What we want to see is lots of ground up innovation and room for different players to come in and make their contribution. And that will ultimately add up to something, I think, very exciting and compelling in terms of a whole city offer. In terms of our ask to government, well, we should recognise that government met our first ask in terms of the capital contribution to get the network built in the first place, and we are grateful for that support. The prospectus does include a series of additional asks to government, some of which have already come to fruition, some haven't yet, and we will continue to have dialogue with DCMS and the other government departments and agencies to support and help us. I think part of the key to this is where we do have an opportunity, for example, the resources we're confident we're going to get around bus improvements, that we ensure there is maximum digital enablement of the way we roll out those improvements. So, smart technology in terms of bus prioritisation, information for consumers that enables them to use the network confidently, smart traffic signalling as part of that. So every time that we have a deal with government, whether it's on transport or education or health, we need to ensure that we've built in the full digital enablement that goes with it. And on your final question, the answer is no, we haven't. And I think it's fair to say that it's not an area that we're expert in. But if there is expertise out there that would enable us to have that conversation and to understand the benefits, then clearly we'd be open to that.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Lots of food for thought there. I'm just going to take some questions from the chat specifically around the smart city ambition. So I'm just going to group together Nick Evans and Ahmed Khan's question. Nick is asking around, the sharing and pulling of data. Usually there is that hesitancy. So how have you overcome the barriers there? And then also a question around the use of cloud to become a fully fledged smart city.
So I'm going to put Steve and John on warning that you're going to take the cloud question, if that's okay. Save my voice in part. I'll take the data question in part, but then I'm going to bring in Peter Tomlin specifically on the on adult care, if that's okay. So on data, there are always two types of data, and so there is aggregated anonymized data, and the way that you can use that to drive AI solutions. And then there is individual personalized data, which obviously if you can share that, then you can provide a different and better integrated service offer. So they're two different needs. They are related, but by keeping them separate, you try to avoid running into problems and sensitivities around information governance and privacy. So if I just talk about the first of those in terms of big data, so we have a certain level of capacity as a city council. We've invested strongly in Power BI in terms of our ability to import different anonymized data sets and then to aggregate, combine them, mine them, in terms of drawing out really good quality data. So give one example of where we've done that very recently is around education improvement. So we've created an educational challenge board, and the first thing we've done is built a data platform and drawn in all sorts of data around every individual school and what they're achieving on literacy, numeracy, science, attendance and behaviour, on exclusions, on inequality. And we've put all of that together, mixed it all up, and then presented it back out to schools on a comparative basis so they can benchmark against each other. And what that does is a conversation changer, because it enables you to go to a school and instead of it being a sort of bilateral challenge, all you're doing is holding a mirror up to them and saying, look, this is who you are, this is who they are, wouldn't you like to be a bit more like them? And then you can build the relationship. And obviously, if you can bring some digital enablement into that, that's even better. On the individual data, I think we've made really good progress on adults. Because we've developed with Staffordshire an integrated care record based on the System C GraphNet platform, and the fact that our social care system, which is Liquid Logic, is the same owner, allows for a pretty easy conversation. So that's really helpful. Interestingly, we haven't made anything like the same level of progress on children's, nothing like. And I think that's partly because of increased sensitivity. I also think is partly because adults is more of a financial driver, and that's not a good excuse. So anybody who can give us support and help in terms of making fast progress and integration of children's data, we will be really open to that. Peter, anything more you want to say on the adult side before I hand over to John and Steve on the cloud?
No, I think you've answered the main issue. Because we've got an integrated care record, we've already jumped over the information sharing issues in order to get there. In terms of the different systems feeding into that, that's already been resolved. Where we're at the moment really is then the use of it and how we make best use of it. So where in the system is the main touch point? The example I would give at the moment is we have a range of people sitting at the front door of the hospital trying to turn people around. What's the information that you can drag off the integrated care record that would increase an appetite for better risk management, people being supported to go home, rather than, as you know, the current situation, which is you go in for one thing and you have 10 different tests and you end up being omitted if you're not careful. So I think what we need to do is use the technology in the best way. And then that will also help us to consider how we develop and distribute and support people in a more digital way as well, so that it goes to the people that need it most within that system. So I think there's the data and the information sharing is not the issue, it's how we implement it, if that makes sense.
Excellent, thank you. And I know in the chat earlier, one of our members, Famio, have put an offer of support around children's services and what they do in around data there. So yeah, just to flag that was there.
So just before we go on, I'm just aware we didn't answer the cloud question. I wonder if we should just get Steve or John to do that.
Yes, I was going to, thank you. I was going to bring in John Bow there.
Yeah, no, thanks. So in terms of cloud, this is something we're absolutely looking at to be able to capture the data that John described in answer to his question in terms of big data. You obviously need flexible and scalable storage. And at the moment, that is something we're working on. So we've started to develop that. We need to do a lot more work on it. We're relatively early days in terms of the development of our cloud strategy and how we get that scalable and flexible demand that we will need to be able to do this on scale. So we're doing it quite successfully at the moment on a bit of a smaller scale, but on that sort of citywide scale, we do need to expand that out into a much more efficient model than we currently have. It is something we're absolutely working on.
Excellent. And Steve, please do come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think the cloud applications and the data usage, not only crucial for the local authority, but it's the application of those to local business. And I think crucially, that's why we're so interested in how we can actually make Industry 4 a reality. What is Industry 4? How do we make that happen in the city, which is something we'd really hope we could get some involvement from techUK around in developing that as a strategy and a wider strategy. Our strength in the network as well is the movement of data, the volume of data that we can move through the system and what that brings with it in terms of innovation. So it's not just about the data itself and controlling the data in the cloud, but it's what we can do by being able to shift significant amounts of data very quickly around the city and what benefits that can bring. Because as yet, big data is an interesting area. I've not really seen that sort of maximised as yet, but data sharing, data movement, we've got a strong USP there.
Excellent. I think we could have a whole session on data and the different types there. So thank you for that. I think we've covered the questions there. If I can bring in Claire Golby, please. Claire, feel free to unmute.
Hi. One of the things I was going to ask, you've all kind of touched on. So my background is, it seems to be fairly unique in this circle. Not only am I a business development manager for Kaggle, which we are a global data analytics company. We deal with ERP, cloud, consultancy, IoT, but I'm also a deputy leader of a council, and I also sit as the chair of adult social care and health on Warwickshire County Council as well. So I get to see these things from the back office and the front end delivery, and I can absolutely attest to the fact that good use of accurate and effective data is a game changer when you come to delivering services, especially in adult social care. We've implemented the wearable tech through our social care channels, and it's working really well. We've integrated with certain medical practices to help people stay out of hospital but give them effective care, so I can absolutely advocate for that. One of the things that I was going to ask was, how are you, it's very outward looking, so you're looking at Silicon Stoke, but how as a council are you looking inwardly to change how you do your delivery of service? Because like I say, I can see it from both sides. I go into the council office and I'm kind of questioning why we aren't doing things in the way that are done in my private sector life, because I know they can be done and I know how it can be done, but local government doesn't seem to kind of pick up on that within itself. We're very outward looking. So what can you tell me are you doing inwardly to affect and improve the outward offer that you've got to Stoke as a whole?
Thank you for that, Claire. Really great question. I'm going to bring John in, so I'm just going to pre-warn him. You're absolutely right. I think credibility actually means that it's very important that you're seen to be making as much progress in terms of how we behave as an organisation vis-a-vis our external ambitions. So we have a digital strategy, as you would expect, which is ours, as opposed to Silicon Stoke, which is about the city. And we are driving very hard under Councillor Brown's leadership, actually, as she is also the portfolio holder as well as the leader of the council. We're driving very hard digitisation, and we have a programme which we're biting off piece by piece in terms of those opportunities to put services online, to make the most of our app in terms of what the public can do. And we do that carefully because obviously there are some residents who still need or want, for whatever variety of reasons, physical interaction. We also recognise that there are some services, particularly care services, where digital will never completely substitute. But we are absolutely committed to being an advanced digitised organisation and have multiple work streams under our digital strategy to achieve that. John, what do you want to add?
Thanks, John. So as John said, we have the digital strategy which launched towards the end of last year, and it focuses on 6 areas. So it focuses on care, customer, commercial. So yeah, I'm going to get these right in a minute. Care, customer, and commercial, and there are a couple of those things. I'll have to dig those out. Apologies, I can't quite remember top of the head. But what we're really trying to do is do a broad digitalization across the local authority, not just in one particular area. So I think customers the one that everyone kind of thinks about and refers to most commonly in terms of how we get our message and how we can interact with our customers on a digital level. We're trying to do more than that. We're looking at the infrastructure that sits behind that. Have we got the correct infrastructure in place? Have we got the ability to do that in a much more in a much more efficient and rounded way. Also data, in terms of the data that we're bringing in via that model. So we can't truly be a digital organization if we're not really understanding the data and we don't understand what that data tells us. So we're doing some work that's been mentioned before around Power BI and how we capture that data internally. We're looking at care in terms of the way we interact with our adult social care colleagues, and there's some really interesting and innovative things going on in care as well. But also the sort of our commercial offer and how we can become more commercial in terms of using digitization for that. Another one of those C's was capability, which I sort of spoke about earlier. And that's really, trying to understand, make sure we've got that technology base in place so we can actually build on it in the foundation. So it's more than just foundation IT. It's actually, looking at the technology that we've got, how we can improve it and how we can bring it forward. So actually we can deliver those ambitions in a much more rounded way.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I can absolutely attest to a good solid foundation and good architecture to host all your digital offer is an absolute must. And going forwards for local authorities, that's not going to get any easier. You need to get it in and get it right, and then start working and building on that for sure. One of the other things, if I may, is again, local authorities are great at actually delivering services that local authorities should deliver, and not necessarily so great at actually understanding the offer of what's out there. So are you filling the skills gap in that respect? So you go into market, if you kind of have an idea of what you want but you don't quite know, are you open to going out to market and testing the market in different ways like that, so you fill your internal skills gap externally?
I think certainly from an IT perspective and that architectural piece that you spoke about, we don't have all the answers in terms of the technology. We know what we want to achieve, and we know to some extent how we want to get there, but we certainly don't have all the answers. And we do utilize where we can external skills, but not just in terms of talent giving us the answer, but working with us. So actually we can upskill our own staff, and actually we've got those correct skills internally within IT at least. So we have those abilities, and we're growing people through. It's actually really difficult to keep skilled IT engineers in public sector. So what we try and do is grow our own to some extent and bring people through, because we do to some extent, except that they will move on. So that's generally the model that we take.
Thanks for that. That's really positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Steve, if I can put some questions to you now around 5G. So first from Ian Corden, who I believe has also mentioned they were born in Stoke, has asked what is the interest in 5G? And then there is another question from Andrew James Thomas on, is there an interest in private 5G?
I think with 5G, there tends to be a fairly standard approach at the moment that we don't necessarily want to adopt. We can, as a city, because of our network and infrastructure, be far more innovative. What we're struggling with at the moment is finding MNOs or operators that will work with us to facilitate that. We're being met with what the current market is, I'm afraid. But I think there's time yet, because although 5G has a lot of interest, and we really want to be a city that enables 5G because of the benefits it brings to industry and public sector and everyone else, we are in a position where we can hopefully work up an operational model that's more innovative, that fits with what we have and the infrastructure we have, and enables the city at the same time. And we need partners, we need support to do that. So that's our current approach. So I don't think the door's shut on anything that's innovative or different, if it works, and if it works for the city, and if it works for the businesses and residents in the city. So we're very open in that sense. I mean, I say it's early doors. 5G, I mean, a lot of the MNOs haven't really started to look at densification as yet. They're still working with 4G and upgrading 4G infrastructure for 5G. So I still think there's time. We have an operational model. We're still having a number of ongoing discussions about how that model may come to market and what the best solution is. And that could very well change in the next 6 months in terms of how the market develops. And in particular, areas like Open RAN. are of interest. So we're doing a lot of exploration around 5G and trying to maximise and learn from what's happened elsewhere.
Excellent. Sounds like, oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if that's feedback from me. Sounds like maybe an opportunity to pick up with some of our members in that space, and in particular our communications infrastructure working group, so that might be an offer there. But yeah, thank you for that openness there, Steve. If I can invite, just it says Marriott to unmute.
Oh, hi there.
Yep, feel free to go.
Yeah, hi. So we've been, you know, I'm Marriott from London School of Digital Marketing. So one of the things that we've been, you know, heavily involved in, you know, over, you know, just before COVID, you know, hit, was working with local councils, you know, such as Manchester, London, and Leeds, and some of the initiatives that they have was that, similar to, I think there's a gentleman, you know, called Andrew that came earlier on when he posed the question about what exactly are you doing in terms of helping the high street digitally to drive, you know, footfall. And some of the things that we've seen, you know, to be really, really effective was, you know, the digital upskilling, you know, training of not just SMEs, but also entrepreneurs. Right, and these are people who have not really set up themselves as you know, as SMEs, but at the same time they're using social media marketing, you know, to actually you know, to keep themselves you know, with the finance. But also on top of that, there is also you know, there was also a gap. You know, that we found, especially, you know, we did, you know, sort of like a diagnostic analysis for Manchester City Council, and this was actually starting from, you know, from school, you know, like year 11s when they're leaving school. So it was one of those things whereby, okay, there's so much absorbed by, you know, social media, especially, you know, Facebook and Instagram. However, it actually leaves a massive gap in terms of connecting them to the industry, you know, to you know, recruitment agencies. And one of the things that we found to be really effective was that just before they left, you know, secondary school into, you know, into college or employment, was LinkedIn. And you know, LinkedIn, you know, to introduce them to a platform such as LinkedIn, because it's actually a professional platform. And what that meant was that even if they're you know, colleges, because a lot of them really struggle with alumni, and keeping track of all their students. Whereas LinkedIn, once you're on LinkedIn, I mean, regardless of whether you change your name, you always be connected to the college or university that you've actually studied. And again, this actually helped in terms of introducing them to you know, to recruitment agencies, introducing them to, you know, to the labor market, so that they just don't dwell on those, you know, fun, you know, dark side of, you know, of social media. So I guess the question then becomes that what exactly are you guys doing, you know, to actually bridge the gap, you know, between when students actually leave secondary school and also pushing them into the professional labor side of it, and also, you know, upskilling, you know, entrepreneurs and SMEs, you know, so that they can actually, you know, continuously, I mean, the world is, you know, digital is actually fragmented the world. How, you know, for them to actually continuously, their businesses, their websites, making sure that they're actually being found, and not just digital marketing. I mean, it could be, you know, well-being, it could be science, etc. You know, as well. I hope that makes sense.
I thought that was a great question, Mary, and I probably haven't got time to properly do justice to it in terms of an answer, but I will give it a go. So I think the key is that you have a reliable, continuous engagement with those young people, really from some part of secondary school right through to post further and higher education. Which means the system as a whole has got to be working in an integrated way. So one of the things we're doing actually at the moment as a partnership is renewing our 14 to 25 strategy for skills and employment, and digital will be a critical part of that. So we've got confidence that we really understand those pathways, and more importantly, the young people and their parents understand those pathways and what they can do. The second is we've got to improve the quality of digital teaching. And by that, I don't just mean computer science teachers. I mean the confidence of all teachers to be able to infuse and embed the potential of digital within their teaching, because that in turn will have an infusing effect upon young people themselves and will increase their skill set and their understanding of the wider application in terms of digital skills. Hence the Digital Schools House project we talked about earlier, where one of our very best colleges, the sixth form college, which I'm actually looking right opposite to at the moment, is equipped and has a leadership role to act as a hub within that overall network of institutions. The third, though, then crucial part of it is the more informal part. So that's one of the reasons why we set out to develop a gaming hub as a place where people can just come and hang out. Got a great idea, want to come and just chat about it, just spend some time, have a cup of coffee or tea, just engage with others, play some VR, whatever it might be. Just come and be with us and let's learn about your ideas. Let's get you connected to who you might need to connect to. We're very fortunate because of the university. Our university is renowned as having the highest quality gaming offer in the country at higher education level, known beyond the UK actually, and using the most apposite software platforms. So a lot of our young people know that, and they want to go to the university because of that. We actually have a different problem. Our problem is that once they graduate, they are snapped up by some of the best software houses in the world, and they leave Stoke-on-Trent. And so what we've got to try and do is give an opportunity and persuade some of those young people to stay in the city and to realise that they can actually build their business and they can build high quality games and other software without needing to move to the other side of the world to fulfil their ambitions. So that's our real problem.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you both for that. We've still got some time to take some questions from the chat before we wrap up and discuss next steps. Keith Vickers, I don't know if you want to unmute just to build on your question around AI, if you're able to unmute. I'll take that as a no, but the question was any interest in autonomous entities needing ML and AI to function safely and accurately? Yeah, I'm not sure if there's any additional context there, but
so if anybody can answer that, it'll be Steve or John. I certainly can't.
Sorry, Georgina, what was the?
Yes, so the question was, I don't know if Keith is still on the call, so I think it could do with a bit more context, but it's any interest in autonomous entities needing ML and AI to function safely and accurately.
It may very well be something that we want to explore, but I think that sort of, for me, builds into this whole thing about us developing an Industry 4 strategy. So we can start to identify the types of entity that are being referred to within the city and develop those partnerships. I think AI is coming into, AI can be overthought at times. It can be very simplistic, AI can, and I think a lot of companies are actually adopting it at a low level, but the enhanced uses of AI, we'd love to see businesses in the city exploring that, or entities in the city exploring that further. I think the fact is, because we've got the network and the quality network there, we have the enabler, we've got the USP, we can do it. Again, it's just another of those areas that we're going to be exploring.
Okay, sorry for that. I was on mute.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, at one point in time, I thought I'd sneak off and get a coffee.
Always the way,
yes,
don't worry.
yes, it is very much so. I mean, I work in IT. I have for many years looked after high performance computing, supercomputers, stuff for R&D engineers and things and so forth. And one of the big problems that businesses are now facing is taking AI out of the lab and putting it into, if you like, production. Yeah, and so things like the network.
Oh, we've lost you, Keith.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, that fibre infrastructure is absolutely essential to add on the sorts of capabilities that you might want to have. Automatic street cleaning, for example, done at night time, and that would require artificial intelligence to understand that this looks like a a piece of paper that's on the pavement, or a bit of chewing gum on the pavement, or I've come across a pallet in the middle of the road. What do? Do I do nothing, or do I actually phone up a human response to that to come and remove the pallet from the road before a car drives into it? All that sort of stuff is capable of being achieved now that you've got the infrastructure, and that very basic networking infrastructure backed up by, let's say, scalable data. That data has to be processed, turned around in the machine learning environments that are required for these entities. And that machine learning is ML ops. I mean, John Bowler, I'm pretty sure you've come across that term before, but you need to get the updated brain for these devices, for want of a better phrase, out to them quickly. That's a process, an ongoing process. AI doesn't sit still. It has to be constantly refreshed and constantly replaced and learned, and that's where the machine learning aspects come into it. But yeah, I find it's fantastic. I live in Warrington, so I'm just outside Stoke. I will now forgive you for digging up the roads and the pavements for the last couple of years. I always wondered I should have had shares in the contraflow equipment that was put up, the traffic lights and things. But yeah, it's fantastic. As a local, great. Let's do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm just going to group some questions together in the chat, which was around collaboration. So one from Gary Todd around, are you looking at, cross-border collaboration, and one other, sorry, there's so many questions in the chat, I've lost it now, but I do remember it, which was around lessons learned from other smart cities, and how are you either working with them, or building on those lessons learned for Silicon Stoke.
Thank you. Shall I take both of those? I can see Steve wants to come in as well, so I'll bring him afterwards. So first of all, in terms of our local relationships first. So clearly we're in the position where at the present time we have got a gigabit enabled network and our neighbours haven't. So there is a difference in terms of capability at the present time. And therefore we've got a very close interest in Staffordshire's plans, because Staffordshire surrounds us, with respect to them rolling out gigabit enabled network. And what we're saying to them is, connect to our network first. So we connect into Newcastle under Lyme. We'd love to have a connection through to Keele University, which is only a small number of miles away to our west. And with whom we have a really close relationship, and they have some amazing capabilities, particularly around energy and sustainability. So it'd be fantastic to have the network connected directly to them. So that's on the local side of things. On the broader, so if we talked earlier, didn't we, about an ask of government? I think one of the things that government could do is actually facilitate an active network of smart cities. And to enable us to collaborate and to learn from one another more than we are doing at the present time. I think there are nascent relationships, but I don't think it is organised to the extent it could be. And we'd love to be part of such a club.
I was just adding to that, if that's okay, John. In response to the facts about other smart cities and what did we learn, I think we learned an awful lot. We probably spent 10 years looking at what other smart cities were doing. It's interesting terminology in its own right. I was once asked, why aren't we a smart city? This was someone in Stoke, and I said, well, probably because we haven't said we were. Sometimes it was as straightforward as that. But the one thing that was missing all the time was infrastructure. I don't think you can be a truly smart city without the infrastructure. And that was the first big lesson that we learned. So our first step was to get that infrastructure in place as an enabler. And that's what we have now. And I think one of the challenges is probably controlling the scope of what we can do in the city now. But the other thing being, we established the Silicon Stoke board very early as a way of enabling all of this. And that is a partnership approach. We can't go it alone, as John was saying earlier. We don't have the resource, we don't have some of the expertise. So we're quite happy to collaborate, to work in partnership, and to just look at the sheer scope of what we can achieve. And I think we've only just scratched the surface. We've got a number of live projects going. We only finished the network in last April, but live projects are appearing, partnerships, collaboration, there's more. So the scope is there, but we've learned an awful lot. And collaboration-wise, we have had conversations with other cities, but I think the point is now, where before we were looking at what other cities were doing, I think other cities are now looking at what we're doing and want to talk to us about our network and want to talk to us about Silicon Stoke. So I think we've done an about turn to some extent.
Excellent. I think that's a nice sentiment as well to add on, Steve. You know, the importance of partnership and collaboration, which this core is all about. So I will draw it to a close because it would be great to discuss next steps. So please, yeah, if our speakers can come back on camera, that would be great. And sorry to those that I've not had a chance to answer your question, but I think everyone has at least had a chance to have at least one of their questions answered. And the volume of questions and comments has been astounding, and I think that's just a testament to the great ambition of Silicon Stoke. Already seeing engagement, offers of support as well as partnerships between members is fantastic, and I think so many people have said this is refreshing. So yeah, great job to you and the team. And I know we as techUK would be keen to put the spotlight on what you're doing and to showcase this as a good example of best practice with market engagement. I think in my 6 years in techUK, I've not seen many. So thank you for this. And I guess it's now, where do we go next? I think there's so many threads and work streams that we could explore. And today's session was definitely a starter for 10 to see what the appetite is and for you to inform members of that vision. So keen to go over to you, John, for your next steps.
And I'm very aware we're almost at 12 o'clock, so I'm going to be really brief. So the first is everybody who's put something in the chat that said they want to follow up, we will follow up. And where necessary, Georgina will come through you in terms of ensuring we've got contact details to be able to do that. Second, we will circulate a single email address after the meeting through you, Georgina, where people can contact us directly. And as I said earlier, we'll then farm out those opportunities to the right people. We'll make sure that every single one is followed up and that those conversations take place. And then third, and this is very specific to some people today, so I couldn't help but notice that we've got quite a few people who've got a very strong association with our city because they were born here or they have lived here or worked here. We have a separate network, a diaspora network called Made in Stoke-on-Trent, and we will also be following up in terms of inviting you to become part of that network because you are all important to us, but those individuals, we would love to renew the relationship and to enable you to have regular updates and to be invited to events and feel that your affinity for the city can continue.
Excellent, great, lots of outcomes there. And if I can confirm, John, you know, this isn't the only session with techUK. I'm sure there'll be lots more to come. So thank you all, John, Steve, John, Michael, Peter and Councillor Brown for a great session. And, you know, I know we at techUK look forward to supporting you in delivering the vision and yeah, look forward to the next session and yeah, keeping abreast of what's next for Silicon Stoke. So leaves me now to close the session, wishing you all a great day and weekend. Thank you all.